I think the biggest challenge you have, if you're looking for that perfect practice, I could go in and join another doctor. Well, the challenge is if the other doctor had never had an associate and you're kind of the early associate, there's a high risk that it could fail for a multitude of reasons.
Cost of goods are high, so everything in your dental office costs more than ever before. Labor is higher than it's ever been before. I mean, I'm seeing people paying hygienists $50, $60, $70 an hour. The salary that you were mentioning that you started with wouldn't even sniff close to a hygienist salary now, right? I know at my practice, if I hit 75 new patients a month or 100 new patients a month, I know all the other economics. It almost doesn't matter what we're paying or what the rent is. We're going to win. But that's changed now because the margins have shrunk. And at the same time, and a lot of people don't track this, I know this, but the patient that's coming in, the new patient, is not saying yes quite as often. Or when they do say yes, they're saying yes to less. Welcome to another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help you create, convert, and close more new patients so you can grow the way that you want. And today I have Dr. Himesh on, and you are going to want to be a part of this. Today, he is the managing partner at Dental Depot, and he is going to break down what they're doing about cost of goods going up, labor going up, patients accepting less treatment overall, inflation is hitting everybody, debt's more expensive, and we actually go into the weeds for about 45 minutes. So this is a little bit longer than what we normally do of how he's solving that. And you're going to want to listen to this because he talks about financing, patient financing, as well as payment structures to your team and how to automate to cut costs, outsourcing, Google, marketing. I mean, we covered it all. This is going to be really, really good for you to listen to because it's going to directly impact your practices. So stay tuned. All right, Dr. Himesh, so why don't you tell me how you got into the dental industry? Why did you become a dentist?
Well, Gary, first, thanks for having me on. Look forward to our time together. Great question. Some things are just by chance. My family immigrated to the United States back in the early 80s from London, England. Parents were born in India and Africa. And we made our way over as a kid and grew up in Oklahoma, small town in Oklahoma, and went on to University of Oklahoma. Always knew as a kid I was going to grow up and be in the healthcare profession. Just wanted to be a doctor of some sort. Initially wanted to go to med school. Gave it a good run initially, took the MCAT and also took the DAT as a whim and did really well at one and not quite as well at the other. And so I asked my advisors what I should do, and they said, go talk to some med students and go talk to some dental students. I did, and the dental students seemed to be having a heck of a lot more fun, and it was a shorter journey to get to the end. And so ultimately, I applied to dental school kind of late, and University of Oklahoma was kind enough to accept me, and the journey started back in the late 90s. And so graduated dental school around 2000.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so 2000, you start your dental practice. So you kind of, it was before that, and I kind of think of dental like pre or post the 2008 recession that we faced, the Great Recession, and then pre and post COVID. Like I kind of look at those as like two huge landmarks. So you were well into dental by the time that 2008 recession hit.
That is right. And I'm like you, I kind of look at those as two major markers in our history. So, when I graduated in 2000, it was kind of the wild, wild west. DSOs really weren't DSOs, and there were kind of some group practices. And I actually went to work for a practice that is now owned by a group that's now owned by Heartland, and had a 1 year kind of position with them and enjoyed the 1 year. I learned a lot what I liked, I learned a lot what I didn't like. And then what was interesting, after my year ended in 2001, I went on and moved to Colorado, where I decided I was going to practice. My brother just got into law school out there. And what was fascinating about that time, there's a little third event that kind of takes place in my career around that time. So I've got all these interviews set up in Denver to go on into work with private practices. And days before my interviews, 9/11 happens. And so a third major event happens. And so ultimately, as I moved to...
You want to hear something crazy? Dental marketing agencies are dead. You got that right. They're dead. Why do I say that? Well, we don't consider ourselves a dental marketing agency. We are a growth partner. What that means is we help our clients not only create opportunities, but we help them convert them and close them as well. And that is what's needed in the day and age that we live, because just getting new patient leads is not enough. You need somebody that's going to help you actually get these new patients into your chair and make sure that they're the right kind of patient for your office. Now, we put together a whole report that will tell you where dental marketing currently is, because there's a ton of changes, tons of things are going on with the market. And we broke down what you're going to need to do to stay ahead of the industry and grow the way that you want. The link is down below. Go check it out. Everything is free. I look forward to hearing from you. That was
Oh,
'01, right?
yeah,
That was
yeah,
right when you
September.
were starting.
That's right, September 2001. About a year, a little over a year after I graduated, and I'm living on my brother's couch and trying to find a job and realize that no one's employing. The world had pretty much shut down again, similar to what we went through in COVID, right? Not clearly quite the same type of situation, but it just shut the world down. And so we didn't know the outcome and expectations. The tech era had kind of come to an end, and Denver was really booming on the tech. And so really kind of stayed unemployed for several months until I got a
Wow.
job one day a week, and then that kind of progressed into a full-time job over the following year as I got busier. So, you kind of get hungry, right?
Yeah.
You're really kind of struggling, living on a couch. I was married with a kid. My wife and daughter were still back
Oh,
in Oklahoma,
wow.
and so I hadn't moved them out because I hadn't found a position yet. So that was kind of my early
What kind of practice did you start at? Like, what kind of practice was your first practice? Was it a GP
in,
office
right
or?
out of school.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was in Edmond, and it was part of a group that was called Gentle Dental. I think they were
Hmm.
California-based at the time. I think they've been all acquired. I think they've been rolled into some. I believe Heartland now. So I did that for about a year, and then moved into private practice. That I got a part-time gig in Denver. Did that for a while, and then opened two offices with a partner, somebody Henry Schein connected me with. Um, it was in my late 20s, decided to build two offices, kind of do the dream. Failed at that, struggled with the business partner. And so,
What happened there? Why did those fail? What went
well,
wrong on those?
he had a small private practice in Aurora, and I was looking to I was kind of hungry, and he wanted to be a straight fee for service practice. Um, didn't want to take insurance, only want to work Monday through Thursday, and we had put up all this debt. And I just questioned it. And we really were trying to do these in two retail settings. And what I realized is that there were some challenges within that. And so he wasn't willing to open Fridays. And, I say we'll see patients Saturdays. And so ultimately it led to us having cash flow issues. And so, by the time I was 30, I'd already gone through, a recession, 9/11, built a practice, stayed unemployed, and, built two offices to have him not work the way we wanted to. And ultimately, he bought me out, and I moved back to Oklahoma in '03, about 3 years after I graduated dental school. And that's when I joined Dental Depot, right about 20 years ago now. And so that's kind of where my journey with Dental Depot started.
Got it. Okay, so now you're in your 30s, and you come to Dental Depot. Did you start as an associate, or did you start as a partner? How did that work?
No. So most of the doctors that join us now are associates. And back when I joined with Dr. Glenn Ashmore, who's the founder of Dental Depot, who opened his first office back in the late '70s, at that time you just had the associateship. We really didn't have anything much to offer. Again, he'd just opened a second office.
Mm.
And I became an associate in that second office with the partner doctor that he had in that office. So I was in there for several years. And, as you may know, our model is a little different. We're a brick and mortar outfit. So we not just own the dental practices, but we own all the real estate. So real estate's always been a love of mine. And, I grew up in the hotel business and the customer service industry in that realm. And so that the real estate side always intrigued me. And so this kind of fit the puzzles for all the pieces I was looking for. It gave me the ability to practice dentistry and really run a business and have real estate. And I got lucky because the senior partner at that Dental Depot allowed me to really help him grow his business. And
Mm.
so over the next few years, under his practice and dime, I was able to really enhance his program and hygiene program and really work on my business skills and dental skills while I was still the associate. And then in 2007, about 2005, I went to Glenn a couple years into it, and I said, "Hey, Dr. Glenn, I'd like to be a partner." He doesn't know what that means. He says, "Hey, you've got to try to move out of Oklahoma City because his kids are going to be dentists and they're going to probably participate in his kind of legacy." And I said, "Well, let's go build our own," and opted
Mm.
to come down to Dallas. My brother just graduated law school, and so off to Dallas I went. We kind of built our first Dental Depot here in Dallas. There's another partner that opened one about 2 years before I did. So that was our second Dental Depot in the Metroplex here in Dallas. Today we have about 7 locations in Dallas.
Awesome. And then, so when did you kind of know? I know one thing that like students really struggle with now, and younger people struggle with now, is like because it's almost like when you don't have a lot of choices, it's actually easier to make choices, right? Where you were like, okay, I just need to find a job, and okay, I've done enough as being an associate than now to start a practice. But now it's like, do you want to work for a private practice with the doctor that owns one location? And they're open 3 days a week, and
Right.
you have to take the same vacation as the doctor, and or do you work at multiple doctor offices where you kind of get a flavor of a bunch of different things, or do you work more at a group where it's still like family owned but it's a group, so they're kind of growing, or do
Sure.
you go to a DSO and there's different levels of DSOs, and some DSOs they want you to be partners pretty quickly and some they don't.
Right.
There's so many options now. How would
It's
you kind of paint the market like from your perspective?
Well, it's a great question, and I say this because I've kind of lived all of it. Like very few dentists get to live just probably about every one of those mediums, and I've probably lived all 4 or 5 mediums, so I can give a perspective. One, you're right. Back when I graduated, the choices weren't as obvious. Two, technology wasn't what it was. Right? I mean, sharing information today is just vast. I mean, I can look up how much does a dentist make, and I could do it. My first job out of dental school was 60,000 for the year. That was my contract, right?
Wow.
I can't imagine somebody getting a $60,000 1 year
I don't
contract.
even think that would pay the debt payment on your school, right?
You know, I couldn't, and so I didn't know. I took the job thinking it was a good paying job, 5,000 a month plus commissions, right? So, I think the challenges that you have today is there are so many options, and there are so many people in your ear to tell you what to do, and you're looking for the right deal. I tell young doctors today, look, the first 3 to 5 years out of school, you're just still trying to figure out your style, your skill set, your passions, your love. I mean, we understand that they really taught us how to be dentists, but they really did not train us to be great clinicians yet. One of the things that DSOs take a knock on, and I kind of support this, but the DSOs is really, you get into a good DSO, they're great support organizations that can really mold you. Now, you don't have to do it forever, but they sure can provide you a great skill set for 3, 4, 5 years with the potential to grow with the DSO. That just depends on where that DSO is going. And I tell young graduates, just figure out where that DSO is going. I mean, if they're looking to, they're not going to probably tell you everything, but if they're willing to share enough information, a good support organization really gives you the skill set, puts you in front of patients, right? They want you to be successful because that's their success.
Yeah.
The challenges you have with private practices is a little bit.
Well, real quick before we move on to private practices, and I want to
Yeah.
hear this. I'm actually really intrigued, but you said figure out which direction the DSO is going. I think where the young people get lost, and where I would get lost, is what do you mean by that? Like, how do you figure that out? Like, what are you looking for direction, and how are they going in different directions? Like, could you break that down for us?
Yeah, well, I think there are organizations out there that are really designed to really be supportive. Like, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
our Dental Depot organization is a very supportive organization, right? It's all internally grown. There's no private equity. We're all self-funded, bought, right? Our doctors buy in and have built our DSO. So we are built on the foundation of a doctor. We're a doctor-owned, doctor-driven DSO. There's no outside. The board seats are held by all of us doctors and partners with some additional help, like, Jack, our CEO, who really helps put all of this together. But we tell you, if our younger, interview other doctors within that DSO and see their progression, a 1 year, a 3 year doctor, or a 5 year doctor, and see their
So when
progression.
you go there, you say, "Hey, I want to talk to 3 or 4 doctors, and I want
Yeah.
to talk to them about their last 3 to 5 years with you."
Yes. Because, and based on different offices, they may have different situations. You may have one that got into just an exceptional office. But I always am of the effect that a great doctor can take an average office and turn it into a stellar office.
Yeah.
You can't wait for somebody else to give you something, right? And it took me a long time to learn as a young doctor that I was always trying to find or buy my dream practice. And what I realized very early in that process is that it didn't exist. Like, there was no dream practice for me to buy because that doctor wasn't living my dream. See, I had to go build and buy my own dream practice. I couldn't buy the dream practice. There's no such thing.
So that makes sense. So then now you said, okay, so you got these DSOs, which are like bigger. We're talking, when we say DSOs, what we really mean is like really big corporations,
Sure.
with a bunch of locations. And then you said you got what was the second one that you were talking about? More like private practice, which
Yeah, so
is
you've got kind of you've got kind of like boutique DSOs, right? A little bit kind of a mid tier, a smaller DSO, maybe more regionalized like we are in certain markets. Then you kind of got group practice. Somebody's got 2 or 3 offices that really doesn't have a support system, a support structure from above, but they're kind of just kind of running 2 or 3 practices. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think the biggest challenge you have if you're looking for that, what I remember as a young kid, I was looking for that perfect practice. I could go in and join another doctor. Well, the challenge is if the other doctor had never had an associate and you're kind of the early associate, there's a high risk that it could fail for a multitude of reasons. One is that if a solo practicing doctor is now ready to grow an associate but hasn't put the thought into the pay cut that the original doctor, is going to have to take, then how am I going to support the other doctor, right? So me, the primary doctor, would have to take a little bit of a lifestyle hit or a pay cut to support this new guy through his growth. And you see too many associates that go into smaller private settings that struggle with that a little bit because the primary doctor is not willing to give up patient flow or isn't willing enough to give up income, and the practice wasn't quite designed for a 2 doctor practice yet, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm. Got it. So what would you say the biggest difference from between like, or how a younger person would be able to identify the difference between like a big corporation dentist that may not be going in the right way versus like a boutique practice that's more regional that definitely is going in the right way, that's going to be more supportive? What are some things that they should watch for?
Well, I think what I see a lot of is that the doctors get tied up, or the young junior doctors get tied up in the contract, right? They get tied up in, hey, what percentage of collections am I getting, or how much am I going to get paid? I can give you a enormous percentage of collections, but if I don't put patients on the schedule, you know, you take that times zero, it's zero, right? 30% of zero patients is
Yeah,
still
yeah,
zero. 40%,
yeah.
it's still zero. And that's the challenge they have. I'm getting paid this percentage, but then what they realize is that I got into the practice and there wasn't that many patients. I'm sitting around.
So just, and I've had this conversation with a ton of dentists, and it drives the dentists that understand it. It drives them mad that the other dentists don't understand this, right? Because it's pretty simple. It's, do you want 40% of $10,000, or do you want 30% of $40,000?
Right.
And it's like, if all we do is we're out here like, I got 30%, and you're like, well, I got 40. Well, it doesn't really matter unless you know what of what pie,
Yeah,
right?
and what I try to educate when we bring on a new doctor is that our percentages may not be nearly as high as somebody else's, but ask the additional questions like, what are you going to do to market me for new patients?
Yeah.
That's a budget, right? We're going to take that money that would have been a percentage of your collections, and we're going to attribute that to solid marketing to get patients in the door. It could be Google ads, it could be marketing you on the website, it could be
It could be
creating
amazing
print.
location, a
Yeah,
really expensive location that you're getting tons of foot traffic on.
yeah, and like at us, we put a ton of dollars into our locations. So, right, it creates foot traffic. It's pretty immediate. So there's a cost associated with that, right? So our doctors very do well. We're probably, our group practices, our doctors are probably some of the highest paid doctors in the country. And I would probably mirror that just to about anybody. But
Which is interesting because they might not get the highest percentage, but they make more money,
they make
which
more
is
money.
really what we're trying to do, right?
Right, right. So it really works well, and our doctors tend to stay pretty tenured, and most of them try to become partners. And we probably have a little over 100 doctors in our group, and probably 35 or 40 are now becoming partners, and several more on the partner
That's so
track.
cool.
So
That's
again,
really cool.
yeah, so it's pretty cool because the doctors really they buy into our system, and they buy into the process, and they become just part of the growth. And it has been really fun working with a group of doctors that have been just great partners to work with.
It's amazing. And one thing that we were talking before we hopped on before we hit record on this podcast was just the trouble that everybody's facing right now in the dental industry. We're kind of in a unique time because you have a couple things that are happening that's creating the perfect storm. So you got cost of goods are high. So everything in your dental office costs more than ever before. Labor is higher than it's ever been before. I mean, I'm seeing people paying hygienists $50, $60, $70 an hour. They wouldn't even, the salary that you were mentioning that you started with wouldn't even sniff close
No,
to a hygienist salary now, right?
not
And
even
so you
five
got,
years ago.
yeah, exactly. And so you got labor's through the roof. You have cost of goods through the roof. You have debt payments are higher than ever before. If you weren't on a fixed debt payment, If you have adjustable debt, you're in big trouble because
Real
interest
big
rates are
trouble.
double, tripled, right? And you see this in a lot of big organizations are in big trouble with this. And then on top of that, you have patients are also feeling the inflation. They're paying more for gas. They're paying more for cars. They're paying more for food. So they're feeling the pinch as well. So their same day cancellations are really, really high for most organizations. And the reason for that is patients just are like, man, I can't afford dentistry right now. I'm going to push this off for a couple months. I'll wait a couple months. So how are you, like, did I miss anything? Like, that's a lot of bad stuff happening at the same time.
Well,
Did I miss anything in that formula? And then how are you guys viewing this, and how are you tackling that?
Well, there's a lot, right? I think where we're challenged is that COVID really is. I think we're starting to really feel the full impact of what the COVID situation. And I'm not talking about the 6 weeks the world shut down. I'm just talking about the whole, last 36 months that we've kind of gone through. First the government prints an enormous amount of money and floods the market, right? And so we have a ton of money that makes us feel better about spending money, which then has now led to some inflation processes that now we have to figure out how to pay it back, which was my fear back in 2020 and 21 when they were printing all this money. I've always been one that, and Glenn always taught us, Dr. Ashmore says, you always got to be fiscally responsible, right? You got to make smart decisions. And I said, well, gosh, where all this money's coming from, where it's going to have to get paid back. So ultimately, we've seen this recession. And what's interesting is that we're in a time where post COVID, right? If most dental practices have really pretty flourished and done well. I mean, it's very
Yeah.
hard to find somebody that's really struggled. I mean, there's a lot of money flowing around, and everyone's revenues were for the most part up. And we were no different, right? Our revenues have consistently grown, and we've had healthy revenues, and we've done well. But what we're noticing as I was starting to study this over the last 12 to 18 months is that, gosh, the margins are just not quite
Shrinking.
what they
Yeah.
used to be. And so, we always said if top line revenue is there, revenue cures all. But here we're in a situation where I thought, well, gosh, revenue for the first time doesn't necessarily cure all, right?
Yeah.
And there could be some chances that we have bad revenue on the books, right?
Yeah,
And
which can, if you have enough practices, that can put you out of business really quickly, right?
yeah,
Like that, if you're negative. And the other thing to keep in mind too, how other like this is different than service-based businesses, but in products, what a lot of products are doing is they're doing what's called shrinkflation. So you go, I have a perfect example.
oh, I know
I
what you're
I
going.
buy this I buy this water right here, and I order it, and I have it delivered every week. I have so many. They just changed these, and they made the bottle smaller. Same price,
Yeah,
less glass, less water in it. And Oreos, they shrunk the Oreos, right? They put less
yes.
pieces of bread in the bread. And
Yes.
so, but it's kind of hard to do that in dentistry.
Right. And I've seen it too. They're calling it like the inflation menu and all the things that we're starting to see where for the same cost, you're getting a smaller portion and they're
Yeah.
spinning it to the health that, hey, we're trying to get healthy. But all businesses are trying to find a solution, right? And I'm in several different forum groups with different entrepreneurs from different groups and we are all challenged with the same thing, right? The first thing is right at the very top, staffing post COVID has been an absolute challenge for all businesses. Not just dental, but all. Not has it just been a challenge to find them, but it's been a challenge on your P&L because anyone who has not seen a severe increase in the percentage of income to payroll to income revenue is not seeing it. But not everyone's seen it. But are you really diving deeper into the payroll, right? So, if you're seeing a 3 to 5% increase in payroll post COVID to pre COVID in just numbers, then that's 3 to 5% that theoretically could have hit margins, from pre COVID time. So, but the thing that I noticed in the last 18 months, and I kind of pulled the P&L to kind of review just as for this meeting, is where we're starting to see what I call the silent killers. And we didn't really pay it. And I'm sure people caught it way before I did is, if your lab costs were 4.2% and they went to 4.4 and then they went to 4.8, you're saying, well, I'm still in the fours,
Yeah.
right? But it was a 0.8% increase. And then you saw
Yeah.
your dental supply costs go from, 4.9 to, 5.3. And you're saying, hey, it's 3/4 of it. It's not a big deal. Well, but you start compounding all the little categories, and now you're at 4 to 6% increase overall. Now, each category saw a small fractional
Yeah.
cost of inflation, but then you tie that in and you say, hey, well, gosh, overall that was like 6% higher than it was a couple of years ago. Well, 6% to your top line is significant.
It's huge.
It's significant. So one of the things that we're challenged with, right, is that I can't do anything about the payroll situation. Like the cost of human capital is the cost of human capital. As much as we would like to solve it, I can't say that I know that my team or anybody's team will come back to work for 20% less or 10% less. That's not happening. So on my P&L, I look at that and say that's one thing that's just not negotiable, right? We can kind of maneuver around it. We can try to play with it. But
Yeah. What about like outsourcing? What about taking jobs that like answering the phones as an example and
so
outsourcing that?
you're hitting kind of where I think where we have to get creative. I think as business owners, we are absolutely going to have to get creative where the future model is going to take us.
Got it.
And one of the things that we challenge ourselves is all the time is thinking outside the box. And I do agree. I think outsourcing your phones, reducing your front office team, right? We're
Billing.
looking at creating, and we're having some really in-depth conversations right now with hygiene. Hygiene is one of those components of P&L that has gone up, and they all want more pay. It's all across the boards. There's nothing any of us owners can do
Well,
about
and
it.
it's because, well, and to be fair to them, and I know some people deserve it, some people don't, but to just be empathetic and put ourselves in their positions, their food costs more, their gas costs more, their rent costs more. Like they're feeling their P&L, so to speak, is
Right,
squeezing as well. So it's like, man, I
right,
can't do the things I used to do, even though I'm working harder.
right.
If
So
everybody's in the same, it's a
right.
trickle effect, right?
And so one of the things we're looking to do is we're going to hit this head on this year. So we've actually gathered up our hygienists and say, look, we recognize, we kind of know the elephant in the room. You guys definitely want to be compensated better. Let's come up with a global solution. Like, let's you be part of the solution versus me trying to figure it out.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a cost of doing business. So what our team is looking to do is going to get, and one of my topics here is that, invest in your teams for a better ROI. Right. So we're actually creating some models to invest in our hygienists to create a better uh, productive model for them. And I was telling, like, if you guys can be part of the solution, then the solve is that you guys will be more productive during your chairside visits. That'll increase the revenue. That just fixes the pay, and we're all happy, and we move on down the road. And they've all bought in. And so we've got some extensive training coming up this summer that allow them to kind of practice at the top of their license and really get them to really excel at their productivity chairside. And if they do that, then hey, it just compensates. I think we're going to create a model here that allows the hygienist to really determine their pay scale based on their productivity, just like our doctors get paid. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
DSOs are looking to do that now, because the elephant's in
Smart.
the room and we've just got to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to work around them with pay, just work with them with pay.
Yeah.
Right.
And it also motivates them too, because I know a lot of times with hygienists, they feel like they reach the pinnacle, right? So you set these KPIs and you set these baselines, and then they reach them, and then there's nowhere else for them to go.
Right.
And so this actually creates a next step for, hey, you can contribute, you can be a part of the team pulling in the direction of making us a successful business. And that's rewarding. Yes, it's rewarding financially, but it's also rewarding personally as well. So I love that. And I also think that outsourcing is a big part. I think dental hasn't really figured that out yet, but it's going. I think we need to get better and better and better at it. Shout out to I work with a lot with Support DDS. They do a great job,
Yeah.
and there's others out there as well. But like for me, what I've always realized about dental, coming from more of a virtual world, is like, why is the person that's making $70 an hour doing a report in Excel for 2 hours? So you just paid $140. You could have outsourced that and paid $5 to get that report made or $10 to get that report
Yes.
made, right?
Yes.
And dental's never really thought that way, because we've always just kind of felt like, no, anything you do, you have to do it in these four walls. But it's just not true. Like, you don't have to. There's a lot that can be outsourced.
Well, and I think with the advent of virtual assistants and some of the other stuff that we've got going on in the world right now, I think the world's is becoming a lot smaller place, and I do agree that outsourcing. And we are actually, check back in with me in about 6 months to a year. We're undergoing some things right now and using automation, using technology, using some sourcing that we think can significant. I think that's the only way that I can reduce the P&L cost in my human capital. I can't do it the current way. So we're actually building some things right now that will probably help us decrease some of those costs in the next 6 to 12 months and really create us back to hopefully is a pre-COVID cash flow and then continue to enhance revenue. I think it's really taking, we've had it kind of fat and happy for a long time. I think it's really allowing us to be able to get very creative with our business models and really run them and be challenged by what's happening in the industry.
That's true. So okay, so labor, what you can do is you can automation,
Yeah.
you can outsource, and you can get more creative with people, how people are compensated, right? So a compensation that's involved with growth rather than a compensation that's just like,
Yeah.
here, I'm going to pay you. So those
Yeah.
are some options, right, around labor. What about the other things, the other areas that are like, what about like patients are being hit with, like, here's an interesting one. I'll bounce this one. I'm really interested on your opinion. I feel like for a long time, dentist and dental has just kind of looked at, as long as my new patient numbers are up, then I'll win. Like, as long, I know at my practice, if I hit 75 new
Right.
patients a month or 100 new patients a month, I know
Right.
all the other economics. It almost doesn't matter what we're paying or what the rent is. We're going to win. But
Works best.
that's changed now because the margins have shrunk, and at the same time, and a lot of people don't track this, I know this, but the patient that's coming in, the new patient, is not saying yes quite as often, or when they do say yes, they're saying yes to less, and or they're no showing on the same day, like a same day appointment, right? Even existing patients are
Right.
doing that, where they're just like, oh no, we're not showing up. How are you? First of all, do you agree with that little breakdown?
Yeah.
And number two, like, how are you thinking through that one?
Well, and I think this kind of leads right into your world, right? Finding the new patient has been more challenging than ever. I mean, you talk about, the elephant in the room is Google and what they're doing, right? And so, and I know firms like yours have done an incredible job, right, trying to get patients in the door and create marketing challenges. I know I've listened to you speak 2 or 3 times now, and getting new patients in the door is a challenge within itself. And I know that one of the recent talks that you gave is really, and we kind of changed our philosophy here lately too, because again, we kind of got fat and happy. We had tons of new patients, but really internal marketing and really driving an internal indicator that would have our patients go back and drive more patients towards us. But I do think that the challenges we have is that if we hang our KPI on just all new patients, right, then there could be some challenges ahead of us, right? Because
Yeah.
one, like you said, inflation setting in, the cost of acquiring a new patient is more than it used to be, right? So you got to put all that into the bottom line of what it costs us new patients. One of the things that we do is really educate our clinicians and everyone in the room. So one of the things we've created is a really nice laminated sheet that's kind of our pass off. And in that pass off laminated sheet, every patient, right at the very top of it, when I come in or another doctor comes in or anyone comes in, we've got exactly how much insurance dollars the patient still has available for the year to spend.
That's
We're
huge.
actually going back and marketing so that we know that if I walk in the top left corner, there's $1,600 to spend. I'm going to educate that patient to be able to, hey, you've got some great insurance dollars left. Because one of the things that we forget is our patients are our patients, but they have no idea how insurance works, right?
Nope. we
Frankly,
don't even we don't even know half the time of how
yeah,
insurance works,
our
right? Like,
clinicians,
it's confusing for the front desk and the
yes,
billing. Like, I talk to experts and I'm like, how does that work? They're like, well, it's kind of murky because it changes, you know what I mean?
yes.
And it used to be this. And so yeah, I feel bad for them because it's like, it's
Yeah.
confusing.
So if your teams know are struggling with it, how does a patient really feel, right?
Yeah.
So it's our job so when we train our clinicians, we really train them to let them know they have a benefit component that will really help pay for this. Because one of the fears for patients is they don't know what it costs and they don't know how the insurance even breaks down. Like medical, right? You pay
Yeah.
your deductible, you pay your office visit, typically
Well,
stuff.
even worse than that, they're coming in, they think the patients, this is the whole horrible thing. Dental insurance really isn't insurance. When I wreck my car, guess what? The
That's
insurance replaces it.
right.
The whole thing. If I have a heart attack right now, I'm going to the doctor. I might pay a deductible or a premium, but for the most part, they're going to get me back to as whole as possible to get me where I need to go because I have insurance. If my house burns down, they're rebuilding my house and they're putting me up in a hotel while they're rebuilding my house. If I
Right.
knock all my teeth out, they're like, here's $2,000 and
Yeah.
good luck.
Right. And we tell patients that really it's not a dental insurance plan. It's just like a dental gift card, if you will, for the year. It's a voucher that you get to spend some money. And it's
Yeah.
good for maintenance. It's good for some basic stuff. But if you have a catastrophic event, unfortunately, dental insurance wasn't designed for catastrophic events, right?
Not at all.
Or a lifetime of catastrophic events. And so that's the challenge that you have, and educating that patient to kind of getting a want and a need. And so there are challenges in but I really do think when you start educating your patients correctly, and especially the patients already in the door
Yeah.
versus the ones that you're trying to still acquire, I
Yeah.
think there's a missing element to the amount of dentistry. And I say this to our teams all the time. I don't even frankly need any more new patients. We just need to take care of all the treatment that's in the charts currently,
Yeah.
and we would never have to see another new patient, right? And so it's just, I think the dynamic that we've started to shifting is concentrating heavier on the patients that are actually already within the four walls of our practices.
Yeah. When people go back and actually look at how much treatment, just treatment that they, not even the treatment that they saw, but the treatment that they actually just told the patient about, it's always so much opportunity. There's so
Yeah,
much opportunity there.
yeah. There's more. Dentistry doesn't even have to be competitive. There's plenty enough people to treat.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to pick your brain on this subject because I think this is one that solves this particular issue. But dentistry is horrible at it. Like probably one of the worst industries at this particular skill set. So patient financing. So when you talk about patient financing, here's what I've seen that happens in the dental industry. The only exception to this is ortho. For whatever reason, ortho is just like, hey, you can just in-house finance it with us. We'll carry the note, and they've
Sure.
just got really good at being their own financers, right?
Right. Right.
Then you have full arch, and they got really good at it because they had to, because it's $50,000, right? No one, most people aren't cutting you a check for $50,000, so they had to get good at it. Everything in between those two, we just haven't really got good at it, and I think the reason why is a lot of people use, like, let's say you use a care credit, and care credit's fine, right? And but a huge percentage of people are getting told no. So what ends up happening is the doctor comes in and they tell the patient, hey, patient, you need $5,000 worth of treatment. You really need this. Like, you're going to be in a lot of pain if you don't take care of this. So you need to take care of it. They're like, man, that's a lot of money. And so the treatment coordinator comes in and goes, okay, it's $5,000. And here's what it's going to cost. Do you need financing? And they're like, yeah, I do. And they go, okay. And they run them through care credit, and care credit denies them. And this is an existing patient that the treatment coordinator has to see and work with. And so now they have this sick feeling in their gut. So they never recommend financing again because they don't want to go through that.
Right.
And really the patient would totally do the work if you just got them the right finance partner and got that monthly payment to a manageable fee. They would totally do it. What are your thoughts on that? Like, where do you see it, and where do you think we're at with that?
It's a great topic, and I think you can almost spend an hour talking on this particular topic because we've actually taken and driven this quite a bit in the last 6 months or a year. I actually think, Gary, what happens is there's an absolute psychology to this, and we had to really go back and really study this more in depth to understand. First of all, most of the people who got into dentistry to help people, right? Whether it's the clinician, whether it's the hygienist, whether it's the doctor, dental assistant, frankly, even our business office people who may have been just people in the back that moved onto the front because they understand dentistry. But here's the thing: financing is understood by finance people. It's not understood by our coordinators, right?
Yes.
And so the challenges we found is that there's the dirty stigma of, well, gosh, I don't want any of my patients to have to finance anything. So we kind of rearranged it. We actually asked our teams to say, hey, would it help you, Gary, if we broke the treatment into installments? Not so much financed it, but just installments. Yeah. And I have explained this to most of the treatment coordinators that we have now trained. Most of them have the new iPhone 14. Okay. And I said, hey, if you went to this Verizon store and you had to pay for that phone, it was $14.99. And the only way you could get that phone is $14.99. Would you pay for the phone? And they're like, no way. I couldn't pay for it. I said, but they never even tell you about $14.99. What they do is they sell you on a 2-year package that has the phone tied in. Yes. And they go, yep, that's how we do it. I said, then why would you not have the same logic to help people with healthcare?
Yeah. And it's, another industry that's amazing at this because it's the auto industry. Cars used to only cost $2,000, $3,000. And back then there was no financing on them. And
right.
So then what ended up happening was the cars got more and more expensive because the parts and the technology and And so it got to the point where almost nobody pays cash for a car anymore, right? Yeah. So now when you go to get a car, they go, so where do you want your monthly payments to be around?
So
right? And it's just a different conversation.
it really is. And if we can get our coordinators to really understand, and doctors to get with their coordinators and have great conversations, that if you can tell them to work into a budget that fits their installments, like if I'm going to do Invisalign for you, I'd ask, hey, Gary, does 100, 200, or $300 a month fit your budget? And you said,
Yeah.
hey, $200 fits my budget. Okay, here's what you got to pay down. Here's what your insurance covers. If we can get you to $200 a month, we can get started. That is really the conversation that if our coordinators just had versus getting into, well, we could do care credit, we could apply for you. Just figure out first what their budget is, right? And then we can go figure out if they can, and then let them know that we work with an institution that allows you to be able to break this into installments. And we go try to remove the financing word and move it more into
That's
an
so smart.
installment word. Right.
Yeah. So would this would it help our patients if we were able to break up the payments for them? And again, I think ortho really has gotten really good at this because they just had to for a while where people just couldn't finance, they couldn't afford it. So then they just said, we'll bring it in house. And they just say, hey, yeah, it's this much a month. You put $500 down and you do $100 or $200 a month. And you do that for until the braces are done and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And now that doctor has that recurring revenue coming in. And when you actually build that up, it's really cool. I was talking to a finance company. They're trying to roll this out. It got a little bit hard when interest rates started going up, but they're still working on it. And what they want to do is they're creating a product where the doctor's office can choose to carry the note basically, but they'll do the administrative work. And then you build, and they'll tell you what the percentage of default is, right? So they know because they've done this over and over.
Sure.
Hey, this person falls in the 10% category. If you finance 10 people just like this, one of them won't pay you, the other 9 will. And then you can actually build that back into your own pricing. So that way you never lose. So you just raise your prices just a little bit on the other 9,
Sure.
and everybody wins. And then now you're creating almost a residual fund or some kind of fund that's paying you every single month. And if you build it big enough, now you have this recurring revenue. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in this space around those things. But I love your psychological hack there of not calling it financing, breaking it into installment payments.
Right. Right. And that's what they've done. When you buy that cell phone, financing's tied in there somewhere, but they've just broken it into 24 installments and made it work. Just made sure it fit my budget for the phone. Right. So we think we can do the same thing in dentistry by just reversing a little bit how we handle and manage that patient.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. I love that. That's so good. All right, so this has been really, really good. Is there any last thoughts or anything that we didn't cover that would help the audience? And let's imagine you're sitting in a stadium. We got 30,000 dentists in there. They all got like five practices or so, and they all want to grow, but they're all feeling the pain that we just described. Is there any other topics that we didn't hit on that we should have?
The only one that I got here that I wrote and I kind of wrote through is what we're really doing a lot of in our P&Ls this last probably year is really looking through all of our vendor relationships, and we're tackling every one of them, right? If one of the big things I found a savings in the last few months was I went and renegotiated all of our credit card fees. It's something that was out of sight, out of mind, and we forget to do it. We call them up and then she instantly reduced our credit card fees, right? I'm looking at our internet fees. I'm looking at our telephone fees. I'm looking at everything that I can go tackle on the non-human capital payroll side. And then the other thing I'm looking at is all my subscription models. Like, is it a want or a need? Can we live without this monthly subscription to this service, or is it just because we think we need it? And the last thing we're doing is we're looking at subscription models and can we build it within and just put that money towards with developing our own people, right? And so some of the things that we were doing to reduce costs are just in taking our own people and letting them grow versus having a third-party vended relationship. And I think what we've done is we've kind of gone through every kind of, I've got my whole P&L here, and we've just gone through all of it and said, okay, let's take a look at all the things that we can potentially challenge our vendor relationships with, gone to our suppliers and all of it. Because even if I get a 0.5% saving here and a 1% savings there and a 3/4, I start to get back.
It's the same effect that you talked about earlier, right? It's
reverse,
0.3.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm going in now, and now what we anticipate is the next 12 months, we'll have really nice cash flow situations because we went in and really tightened our belt with all the other vendor relationships. Because I can't figure out the payroll piece. And, we're looking at the AI and the sourcing and all that, which I think will come in time. But until that fully integrates, right, we look at all the other things. So I think anyone out there, if any words of wisdom, right, just go back and really study your P&Ls. I mean, I think that's kind of where we wanted to hit this topic really hard. But I mean, take time. I mean, don't just look at your top line and what your net profit was. The story's in the middle,
Yeah,
right?
I love
And
that.
take some time and really read the story in the middle. And when you
So you're
do,
telling me there's no easy answer. There's
there
no,
is no.
there's
I
no.
wish
Oh,
there
we're
was.
gonna hire a marketing company, or we're gonna hire this new consultant, and that's gonna fix
Yeah.
everything.
No, I think as entrepreneurs out there and business owners, I think you just have to get gritty. I mean, this is where we roll up our sleeves and it's time to get dirty and get into the weeds. And you might have to do things you've not done before, but it may have a residual long term payoff in results. And so most entrepreneurs are very result based, and this is where in the last 12 months I've had to go really tackle some things. And for the most of my career, it was top line revenue, and we drove it. But now we're saying, okay, that's not always going to fix all of our margin problems.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This is really, really good. I learned a lot. Hopefully, our audience picked up on some of this
Yeah,
stuff, and hopefully, it starts helping people move in the right direction. So awesome, awesome, awesome job today. Thanks so much for
yeah.
coming
Hey,
on.
Gary, appreciate it. You guys take care. Bye.